we thought, okay, the most important thing, you have to put something in a text box. So you have to have some kind of subject. We tested the small version of prompt, just a subject. So a soccer ball or a horse, or, sometimes we didn't even use a descriptive word, we just used a word. So we have the subject, then we have details. So those are things that are going to tell you about it. And what we discovered in the short version is just once you get past 4 or 5 details, they start getting mixed up, lost, scrambled, all kinds of things happen with the details, which sometimes can be cool, but most of the time is, not what you want. And then you have your modifiers. So these are technical descriptors. So if you know about photography lenses, using specific lenses or cameras is an awesome descriptor. If you go on a photography website and you look at the lenses that somebody used on a photography website, then you're going to be able to say, oh, now I know what to add, because somewhere it's going to have referenced something with that lens and have at least an idea of what that lens might do.
Andrew's been here since the beginning. He's been backstage the whole time.
Yeah.
And we just had a good session with Michael talking about text to image generators. You've recently also generated close to 1,000 images.
Yeah. But we definitely generated 650 images in our main study, and then hundreds. I didn't count certainly didn't count any of the ones that were throwaways, and probably
throwaways, and then also the ones when we were basically doing our test design, right?
Yeah, we're just in the exploration phase. It's funny how far we've come since the last Synthedia, right? Like all these text to image generators basically really came online for the public, within the last 3 months since we did Synthedia 1. I think only a few were really easily accessible then, and the ones that we have now are just so much better. They just improve constantly, right? So.
Absolutely. Okay, so Andrew Herndon works with me at Synthedia and Voicebot, and works largely on the research side, some on the design. He has an art background, so it's perfect alignment for him to lead up the research on the text-to-image AI generators. Andrew, how do we want to go through what some of your key findings are? Do you want to bring up your slides right now?
Yeah, I can go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully great. So we've been studying text-to-image generation since before the previous Synthedia, but we really, like I said, once things kicked into high gear, within the last 3 months, as more and more products came online and more places started offering it, we really started looking deeply into it, trying to get a handle on just what's going on, everything from just the way that the fusion models work to how people are using them, a whole bunch of things. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. Like I said, the market is definitely exploding. This is just kind of to give you a taste of what's going on. These are a few of the products that are coming out from Stable Diffusion that are linked to it. And then OpenAI has numerous products linked to it, but there's probably at this point 30 or more products linked to Stable Diffusion.
Hundreds.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
definitely hundreds.
Right. And then Midjourney is kind of linked to Stable Diffusion a little bit, but we're still trying to work that out. It's more of its own thing. It likes to sail alone by itself, as you can see by its lovely logo. And then Night Cafe is one that's been around for a while. It's got its own generators that it was working on. And then as these other generators have come online, it's kind of said, hey, I want to let people use those too. So that's a real interesting one. It's certainly loved by AI artists, I think, in a way that some of the other ones aren't. I think there's lots of people that just like it and have been using it. So, okay, let's move on.
And I think just one thing around OpenAI, there's a number of partners that are using the API for OpenAI's DALL-E and DALL-E 2. But Stable Diffusion, if you see some company that has an application and they just added text image generation, almost always is it going to be Stable Diffusion.
Right.
So it'll be the exception when they're using DALL-E.
Well, it's because even though OpenAI is called OpenAI, its Stable Diffusion is just much more open, right? So
well, it's open source.
Yeah. It's so OpenAI is like, they mean they're open to maybe corporate to corporate. I don't know. But anyways, so the big three really are the DALL-E from OpenAI, Midjourney, and Stable Diffusion. We studied a lot of them, so some of these are listed below, but we can just keep going because they're also on the next slide. So with our research project, we generated almost 1,000 images. We used 10 generators for the specific research that we were doing, try to compare the generators themselves, the interfaces with them, and then whether they had any spin on the image creation, if there's anything that we could tell that might have made it different, especially the things that were connected to OpenAI or the connected to Stable Diffusion. There was a little bit of variation in there, so we've been looking at that. We did this exercise where when we were thinking about it, we thought about prompt depth, which we'll get to in another slide. But how long or short the prompt is, does that matter? Does it matter how much information you put in the prompt? How does that affect your output? And then we also combined that with numerous styles. So we didn't want to just say, well, we're just going to, do everything is going to be a picture of a hamburger, and we're going to have hundreds of pictures of a hamburger, and we'll have to analyze those. We thought there's a lot of different art styles. There's a lot of different subjects that you have. They're almost infinite. So we just picked enough that we felt like we had a good representation of things that people might choose to put in there. So talking about what they do best, they all do text to image generation well. They all are. Certainly there's been more developments recently with Stable Diffusion and Midjourney, but DALL-E, what it does well is does natural language input. So if you want to write a story for it to draw you for or something like that, it's going to do the best at getting that from the outset. Midjourney is highly stylized. We were talking earlier, I think maybe Bax or somebody was talking about how artists just love it. They love it. It shows them what they want to see. And it's true. It's, Midjourney 3 had its own style, and then now there's a version 4, and that's, even deeper into a kind of style that I think we'll probably be calling the Midjourney style. When you see images that look that style, even if they're made with Stable Diffusion, which can totally make images that look similar to the Midjourney style, Midjourney on your first go is going to give you kind of a highly stylized image. And then Stable Diffusion is really where there's so many flavors of Stable Diffusion. You can find different people that have made their own version of Stable Diffusion. They've already put their prompt modifiers in it. And so you might be able to do easy that. But if you want to have it like a detailed prompt, what you're talking about, you know that like you want to have a lot of specific things, Stable Diffusion is usually going to be the one that you're going to gravitate towards. So, and let's see what we learned. So we definitely learned that faces and hands and details, they need a lot of work. That we not always, but we often see extra fingers. I've got some slides coming up that are showing some of those things. The specific details that you ask for, you can't count on your prompt being right. So you really need to check your prompt, figure out if there's some way that you could say something better. But with enough time and iteration, you can adjust the prompts. You can go back, you can try again, you can try again. There's infinite tries, at least with Stable Diffusion, and most of these are cheap enough that you're not really paying a lot per image. They have different price points, but most of them are still really low. And it's certainly time-wise, it's very low. You're going to invest more time in figuring out the right prompt than having the generator generate your image. And then the updated models, really, they've made significant improvements in terms of the style, in terms of just how well the newer models from Stable Diffusion work. They just work a lot better. They're capable of a more detailed image. The Midjourney 4, it's just there's a big jump in quality level with Midjourney 4 across the board. I think that it does a lot of things well, but Midjourney 3 did a lot of things well, and Midjourney 4 really just
one of the surprising things about it is Midjourney 3 was so good.
Yeah,
it's
right.
I didn't think that the Midjourney images were bad until I saw the Midjourney 4 images.
Right.
It's really that. It's like, I didn't think that Instruct GPT was bad before I saw Chat GPT. That's one of the themes I think that people should take away, that 2022 has been about leapfrog advancements. Really significant step ups.
Right. And you might want to use Midjourney 3 instead of Midjourney 4. If you had a prompt that was working for you with Midjourney 3 and you remember the prompt, you have it written down, because of course you can see it in images, but you can go back and redo Midjourney 3 to get something like that versus, trying at Midjourney 4. Of course, I think Midjourney 4 might still most likely still be your better bet. So here we have some of these things I was talking about. We have this awesome picture of Yoda, right? If you look at this picture of Yoda and you're not paying attention, you look at it, you're going to go, that is Yoda. It's so good. It looks like an amazing drawing of Yoda at you. And then you look closely and you see, well, what's that like weird extra hand in there? Is something extra is going on there. So if you were the type of person that's going to rush and put something out and not pay attention to something like that, because you could actually overlook it because it's so small in there, right? It blends in pretty well, but then you might put it out and then you'll realize later, oh, that's a gaffe. I should have redone it until I had a more perfect image. And then, we have this other one in the middle with the horses. And this is a common problem, especially with horses. I've noticed, because we did a lot of research with horses. There's lots of people love images of horses. We made sure to choose that. So we have clearly extra limbs on the horses. The one in the bottom left is more like a mountain than a horse. So, and then we have the polar bear example on the right. Commonly, sometimes the AI decides that an extra head or sometimes eyes on the wrong side or things like that. Sometimes it makes that decision for you and you just have to say, okay, let's just scrap this one and move on. But again, iteration is going to help you with that, changing your prompts. I saw in the comments in the chat somebody was mentioning negative prompts, which we're going to get to, I think, in a sec. But those are the common things that we see, that even with the newer versions, we still see it. And there's ways to deal with it. There's always ways to deal with it, but most likely either iterating, just drawing it again. Those are always going to be better for you. So
yeah, absolutely. And just point out these heads on these horses, like this one, that's a seahorse head on a terrestrial horse. That's like not what you want. Yeah. This is not really and that's in the upper right of the horses and the upper left of the horses. You got these. So like, this is one of the things we talked about with Michael Pierre Price, is that, expect to generate maybe 10 images for the one that's going to work for you. Maybe more, very often more, particularly as you're learning how to design your prompts.
And for the pros in the audience, that horse was definitely Midjourney 3. You might have been able to tell from the color choices that it used, since I didn't put in a lot of modifiers for that. So this is the anatomy of a prompt. The way we thought about a prompt, we talked about it in our study. We thought, okay, the most important thing, you have to put something in a text box. So you have to have some kind of subject. We tested the small version of prompt, just a subject. So a soccer ball or a horse, or, sometimes we didn't even use a descriptive word. We just used the word. So we have the subject, then we have details. So those are things that are going to tell you about it. And what we discovered in the short version is just once you get past 4 or 5 details, they start getting mixed up, lost, scrambled, all kinds of things happen with the details, which sometimes can be cool, but most of the time is, not what you want. And then you have your modifiers. So these are technical descriptors. So if you know about photography lenses, using specific lenses or cameras is an awesome descriptor. If you go on a photography website and you look at the lenses that somebody used on a photography website, then you're going to be able to say, oh, now I know what to add, because somewhere it's going to have referenced something with that lens and have at least an idea of what that lens might do. So we have these details in the prompt, and we tested them again across 13 different subjects with details and modifiers from 1 through 5, either just the subject 1 detail, subject style, and on and on. So we had like a paragraph. And then our takeaways, again, the natural language works, but even with DALL-E 2, you're better off kind of trying to add a little bit more than just having like a nice flowery sentence. So, if you want to put a poetic sentence in there, it's going to make you something. But if you want to add details and, check your prompts, you're going to do better. So you can do either way, but generally speaking, you want to separate your ideas with a comma, and you want to be strategic about them. Iteration, again, I think Michael was talking about this. So you might get what you like on the first bat, but you almost certainly aren't. You're going to get something close, and then you're going to say, okay, what can I take away from this prompt? What can I add? And then with Stable Diffusion 2.0 and 2.1, we have negative prompts, and they're also going to show up in the other generators. I'm pretty sure. I think that they are also now capable in Midjourney. I think there's a way to do them, but I have to do a little bit more research since we're mostly studying the images that we've created right now, which, as you may have guessed, studying an image that you generated takes much longer than doing just looking at the image to make sure it's right. If you're looking at 4 images and you're trying to figure out, it's going to take a lot longer. So, and then the last takeaway is, do you want to start with a generator you like best? So yeah, here you have some pretty decent examples from all of the generators. So we have a Stable Diffusion, we have Midjourney, and we have DALL-E. And so that Stable Diffusion one, that was one where I was experimenting with negative prompts, and it just turned out really, really good. So that's why I picked that one. I wanted to have more variance in these images, but that one just turned out really interesting. And also you can see that's a Midjourney. I think that was a Midjourney 3 image. Actually, it might have been Midjourney 4. I have to double check the prompt on that, but it was still, just an interesting image, a cool kind of looking image. And then we have DALL-E there. We did some of these, space scenes. We did a lot of testing around, all the different genres that someone might be interested in. So that one just looked kind of cool. We like those buildings. So for those of you that haven't been using image generators, which I'm sure there are some in this audience, I bet a lot of our audience has already used them, and maybe some of the stuff I've already saying rings true, or maybe you're a little different take on it, but you should use what you know. So Canva and PixArt, we looked at both of those, and they do a fine job. We're going to talk about a project we did completely in Canva after this, and but they can do a fine job. They're pretty basic. They're not going to give you advanced parameters. They're not going to give you any of the extra menus that using like the Beta Dream Studio might give you, but they are still totally going to give you something. One thing I noticed on this is that Canva actually told me that Ferrari was not an acceptable word for me to use. So we had a prompt that was like a 1984 Ferrari Testarossa, and it wouldn't let me use Ferrari, but I still did the prompt without it, and it worked out fine. It gave us the image we were looking for because it was such a detailed prompt to begin with. So I think we're going to see more of that. I think especially as brands are completely aware of this. So things like Canva that are big name players are going to be shying off of some brands that are lawsuit heavy. So I don't know that that's the reason why. That's just my assumption. Night Cafe is the greatest place to get started. If you want to dabble in both, you sign up, you get 5 free credits a day, and you can buy credits if you want to, but you can use Stable Diffusion and DALL-E too. So you can kind of just mess with it and get something. And then of course Midjourney, you got to try it. If you don't, it's the easiest way to get an image you like. All of them, you're going to get an image you like if you iterate a lot. Chances are the first image you make from Midjourney is going to astonish you. And then, you're going to go on from there and you're going to learn how to make them even better. But you do want to make sure that you are switching into the V4 because it defaults to V3. So those are just some of the learnings that we had for you guys. And then of course, we're doing this research and we're going to have much more in-depth analysis that we're still in the process of, because reviewing hundreds of images takes a long time, even if you're a group, even if we've got some people that have been kind enough to give us a little bit of feedback on some of the images that we've got, but we're still chugging along on that. So
yeah. And one of the other things I'll point out to people too is the interface is going to be different depending on what you use. So
right.
Some of the AI image generators are predominantly designed for mobile use, for example. Others are going to be some sort of web app. And then you have Midjourney, which you're going to be in Discord. So if you're not familiar with Discord, you got to learn Discord and be comfortable with that, to get started. And then you have to go into one of the channels and you have to generate it. And there's all of these different solutions have these little nuances, right? Because we're in sort of the Cambrian explosion right now. There are no standards in terms of what people's expectations are. So everyone's just creating it a way that works for them. Midjourney actually took off, I think, for two reasons. One, maybe three, but one, that you had this artists were interested in it very early, partially because of the style, but also because of the community. That a lot of artists like to connect with other artists, see what other artists are doing. And because it's in Discord, you see what everybody's doing in real time. And so that's a really interesting experience. So I encourage people actually to go and try multiple. So many of you have probably tried one or two, try several, because what you're going to find out is they're good at different things and they're useful in different ways. We are still very early on this, but already there is significant benefit to be gained from this. Not just generating art, but we use it for articles all the time now. And we're not like taking some stock image or something like that. We're doing something that's like on topic, and something that we have rights to for sure. And so there's a lot of really interesting things associated with this. So to wrap this up, Andrew, maybe what's one thing that surprised you most as you've been going through all of this research?
Well, real quickly, I saw in the chat somebody asked when negative prompts deliver utility. And I just want to say that almost negative prompts are great. You should start off with a prompt, getting a prompt that you like. Once you've got a prompt that you like that's delivering something for you that you're like, this is pretty good, that's when you can start layering in a negative prompt and refining it. So a lot of the ones that I found were good were like abstract. If I put that in, it would generally clean up some of the AI riffraff that kind of shows up on the, just rare pixels and things that sometimes AI puts in there. So that's what my 2 cents on negative prompts. You want to start with the real prompt and then add the negatives once you kind of got a prompt that you like. So.
Excellent. So the thing that surprised you most?
Well, the quality level and just how quickly, like we started hardcore in November generating all these images, right? And then by Thanksgiving, it's already like, do we regenerate these images now that we have the new Stable Diffusion? And Midjourney 4 happened right around that same time. So we did everything in Midjourney 3 for the main part of the thing. And then I went back and did Midjourney 4 for a lot of them too, just to get for me to really kind of figure out the differences between Midjourney 4. And it's huge. Like Midjourney 4 is just a whole another lap. I like to liken Midjourney 3 to like, it's like cool 70s sci-fi art, and then, or like, something like that. And then Midjourney 4 is like 90s image comic book art, but like with a modern shading and, all kinds of, it's just its own thing. And it's really cool. It's hard to really pin down what that style is, but feel free to tell me what you think the style is, Andrew at Voicebot.ai, or just reach out to me if you love creating art, because we'd love to hear from people that are working in the space, whether you're an artist or you've never made art in your life and you're just spellbound by it. So
absolutely. Well, that's great. And I would say that be prepared for garbage.
Yeah.
Solutions generate a lot of bad images.
Yeah.
But don't be discouraged by that, because you can regenerate, you can add to your prompt, you can learn. Just understand that you'll get something faster than if you created it yourself, most often. But it might take a little time. And then as you get better at crafting the prompts, you should be able to get to the output you want faster. But there's just a lot of garbage. And there are some that, particularly some on the older Stable Diffusion models that haven't really invested much in their own tuning, that just they're not very good. So they're fine to experiment with. You might get something interesting out of them, but there is a clear differentiation between what Andrew referred to as the big three versus the others today. That might not be true 3 months from now, but right now it seems that those organizations are investing the most and really lining up around higher quality outputs when you do get the 1 of 10 that is the one that you're going to go with.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, with AI images, we're going to have a new saying, not garbage in, garbage out. It's going to be more like something in, maybe amazing out, maybe garbage out.
Maybe garbage out.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll have to find that phrase, but I'm sure it'll be awesome once we can find it.
Synthedia. Synthedia.substack.com. Synthetic media, virtual humans, voice clones, deepfakes, AI image and text generation news and more.